Ahoy there, me hearties, and welcome back to Tekking101's kitchen. What pirate-themed grub am I gonna be cooking up today? Yarg! Okay, hey everybody, how you doing? Tekking and Barry back again. I'm excited for this one. This is another episode of Rolls on the High Seas, where we roll a dice to determine which one we're going to talk about next. And this is actually a special episode because we actually do in fact have real rolls on the high seas! If you're listening to this episode as a podcast, you can't tell what I'm doing right now, but I'm holding up a tray of rolls, which were baked at some location and were packaged, which I then purchased at a supermarket. But they smell good. All right. Rolls on the high seas. Today we're talking about the cooks, the chefs, the garcons. Wait, no, garcon is waiters. Well, whatever. Sanji's all of that stuff in one thing, so it doesn't matter. The people that were indispensable on the pirate ship. Every single pirate ship back in the golden age of piracy in the 17th century had a 5-star Michelin star, whatever star chef on their boats at all times, cooking up all the most gourmet food ever. All right, not even joking around with that one. I could honestly kind of see Gordon Ramsay on a pirate ship. I mean, can't you? I mean, a little bit. Like, you know, if they ever did, like, a pirate... Oh! Gordon Ramsay should play Zeph in the One Piece live action. Holy crap. Can somebody get on that? Jamie Lee Curtis is interested in playing Dr. Kureha, which I think that's the perfect role for her, honestly, because she likes One Piece. I don't know if Gordon Ramsay likes One Piece at all, but my God, he would make the best Zeph ever. It's great. Okay. But you can see him on a pirate ship, kind of, right? Okay. So, obviously, back in the golden age of piracy, we're talking in the 1600s into the 1700s. Yeah, they didn't have, you know, no gourmet chefs back then. In fact, what defined a gourmet chef in that time period and what defines a gourmet chef now, those standards, very, very different just because of, you know, lack of technology. There were no freezers. There was no refrigeration back then, right? And, you know, just in terms of the cooktops themselves, like, you know, the stoves and things, they had that stuff back then, but it was like wood fire stoves and things, a little bit harder to maybe control and stuff. It's a little bit trickier than like the induction cooktops and the gas stoves and stuff we have nowadays. They didn't have air fryers back then. No air fryers, not a single one, you know, so it was hard back then. No pressure cookers. Man, hard times to live in, right? So when it came to pirate ships, how did this exactly work? Well, cooks were not really like a special crewmate or anything like that. Not on the same level where the captain and the quartermasters sort of got like an extra share of the treasure. Even the carpenters and the doctors would receive a little bit more of a higher portion. No, cooks were typically just a regular crew member that just happened to be pretty decent at cooking. In fact, I really couldn't, you know, see it much more beyond, like, they get the crew together, they're about to shove off, and they're like, all right, mateys, who's the best at cooking food, or who could do the most with it? And like, I'm pretty good, Captain. I'm like, all right, you're the cook. Have fun, right? There you go. It was also a position that was held by a lot of people that might be actually injured in combat or something. So if somebody were to lose a leg or lose an arm or something like that, you know, they could still be useful to the crew in other ways by cooking food, all right? So they're not going to scour the land to try to find a good chef in order for it to, you know, be a service to a pirate ship, right? Hell, they barely even really had a good doctor half the time. I mean, yeah, they might have some decent doctors that might know a little bit about medical science. Medical science back in those days, of course, very different from now. Most of the time, it was just somebody that knew enough to, like, you know, amputate a limb without the person dying in the process, right? You know, so they might look a little bit into that, but they were probably more focused on, you know, people that knew how to fight, people that were, you know, good carpenters to keep the ship itself afloat so it doesn't fall apart, a good quartermaster, a good captain. Those things were, like, something they might, like, focus on. But when it came to, like, cooks, it's pretty much just like, okay, can you cook decently so we won't all die? Okay, good. You take what you can get, which in many cases was not much, all right? So what exactly did pirates eat while out there on the high seas? You know, this wasn't just a situation with pirates. It was with any sailing vessels, you know, merchant vessels, marine vessels, navy vessels. You know, they all had kind of the same problem here, and it was, once again, no electricity and a lack of refrigeration, all right? Now, at the beginning of the journey, this really wasn't that big of a problem because because you could just stockpile everything you could at the port. So at the beginning of the journey, for the first few days, you would probably eat fairly well. You would have fresh meats and cheeses and veggies and fruits. Those are important so you don't catch the scurvy. Also eggs, they probably had eggs as well. And in a lot of cases, they would even bring cattle, goats, and chickens just on the ships themselves. These were big ships we're talking about here, okay? So they would have goats and chickens wandering around. Of course, they can get eggs from the chicken and goat's milk and cheeses and stuff. Well, I don't know if they could actually make cheese while on the boat. I don't know. I guess maybe you could. I'm not really sure how that process would go. It'd be very different from the way it would work now, but I guess they could do it in some extent. Probably mostly just for the milk and things. And then as time went on, with, as I said, lack of refrigeration, like you go to the store, right? And you get yourself a nice cut of like ground beef or ground chuck or whatever, right? And you come home and you sit it in the fridge. I don't like to have meat in the fridge for longer than a day or two before I cook it. Okay, I always feel weird, if let's say I buy some meat on Monday, put it in my fridge, and I'm like, okay, I'll make something tonight with that. And then something comes up and I have to go and I don't end up making. It's like, all right, I'll cook it tomorrow on Tuesday. And then Tuesday happens and something else comes up and it's like, oh, okay. So that's just the thing with me, meats, especially chicken, vegetables, anything like that, I like to cook within like 1 or 2 days after I put it in my fridge, okay? That's just me. But that's a problem we have now. Imagine how it would have been back then with no refrigeration whatsoever. Yeah, you bring on some, hey, okay, I got a good cut of cheese, Captain. All right, pass out the cheese. Cut the cheese, first mate. I will gladly, Captain. They pass it out to all the pirates and they're eating good meat and good cheese and everything's good. Imagine a lump of cheese, a big round wheel of cheese just hanging out at room temperature aboard the high seas, no refrigeration whatsoever. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 17, day 35, day 62. These would be long sea voyages we're talking about here, ladies and gentlemen, okay? We're talking months at sea at sometimes. Now, they would stop at ports, but then again, you're pirates, so you gotta be a little careful. They have to be ports that are okay with pirates docking there, and so they could get a good meal at like a tavern or a pub or whatever they would find there, and they could stock up on more food. But if you're at sea for weeks and weeks on end, that cheese is going to be getting moldy. That bread is going to be getting really, really stale. It would be like hardtack usually, which are really, really hard biscuits. I think in the war, like World War II, later on, they would call them like steel plates or whatever, is essentially, because they'd be these biscuits, these crackers that were hard as freaking like, steel, like, like a bulkhead or something. Oh my God, break your teeth off of. This hat keeps falling down, whatever. So, at the beginning, not that big of a deal. Also, the piece de resistance, something that you could not do without back in that time period, spices. Spices, 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 spices. You do not understand, like, if you know anything about history, okay, then you know right away, like, how big spices were, okay? But if you don't know anything about history all that much, if that's not your focus, spices, 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 okay? I have literally summarized the last 10,000 years of human history with just spices, 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 okay? I guess we could go spices, spices, war, spices, spices, religion, spices, spices, geography, spices, spices, salt, spices, spices, Alexander the Great. There you go. There's the last few thousand years of human history to bring you up to speed a little bit there, right? But anyway, yeah, spices were ridiculously important back then because, well, for one thing, it could help preserve the food, but also it would hide the disgusting smell and the taste of the food. So I'm not even kidding that back then spices were such a big deal. It was because, yeah, you got this piece of meat that's not really all that good anymore. It's less than fresh at this point. Just sprinkle a lot of, herbs and spices, some salt on there, and just, okay, yeah, that was okay, I guess. It's just like, that's what you had to do back then. Oh, dear God, I'm happier I live in an age with refrigerators. You don't understand. Like, we are good. I mean, there's a lot of bull crap happening in the world right now, but at least we live in a world with electricity and refrigeration. Holy crap. But yeah, herbs and spices, need to have those while on a journey. Oh, and here's a little trivia question for you. See if anybody knows this. Is salt considered a spice or an herb? Vote now Okay, all the votes are in, and if you voted for neither, congratulations, you're correct. Yeah, spices and herbs come from plants, and salt is a mineral that comes from the ground, right? So, yeah, and as anybody's wondering the difference between a spice and an herb, spices are typically a lot stronger than herbs. They both come from plants, but spices contain a lot more essential oils from the plants that they originate from, and herbs contain less. Herbs are also more like, herbs would be like parsley and oregano. A spice would be like cinnamon, for instance, okay? Something like that, right? But yeah, so when it comes to herbs, they're more like just aromatics and stuff like that, okay? But then obviously salt is a mineral. Yeah, pepper would also be considered a spice, obviously. Okay, so yeah, stuff like that, very, very useful. Then you're talking about, weeks and weeks on board, and this stuff is going to start going bad, and if you eat it, you could get sick, and if you get sick aboard a ship, you could just straight up die. Of course, scurvy is a big deal. Scurvy was actually something that was referenced early on in One Piece during the East Blue Saga. Remember the whole situation with Johnny and Yosaku and how the Straw Hats met them, and Yosaku was stricken with scurvy. Now, of course, this is the One Piece world, so all they had to do was take a bunch of limes and just squeeze them over Yosaku's mouth, and then he just popped back up and he was perfectly fine. In real life, it wouldn't really work like that, but no, scurvy is a serious problem back then because of a lack of vitamin C, lack of vitamins in general. So your skin would go pale, kind of like a necrotic sort of color. You might lose your teeth. I mean, it was disgusting. You'd have like a sickly yellow color, I think, around your eyes. Your body would literally start to shut down. Not very fun. Actually, I remember that there was something that got shared a while ago that that scene in One Piece with them like treating Yosaku with the limes, that actually showed up in an actual medical textbook in France, I believe. If I can get the screen capture, I'll show it to you. But that's just great. One Piece is permeating, so you can learn so much from this story, right? Of course, okay? So yeah, there's that. Now, eventually, they would probably just start, killing the livestock on board for more fresh meat, kind of like backup food or emergency food, especially if the chickens stop laying eggs and everything like that, or it'd be harder to get the milk from the goats. Because remember, animals, the rate they produce those things is also dependent on the amounts of stress that they have. So I can imagine you taking a bunch of chickens and having them on ships. That's not their natural environment. The chickens might be a little bit stressed out by that, and they might not be laying a lot of eggs. And if they don't lay a lot of eggs, well, then they just get killed, and then there you go. I also wanted to know if there were any ducks that were brought on board pirate ships. I assume there would be, but the thing with ducks is they could just escape. The duck could just be like, I'm out of here, and he like jumps over the boat, and he's like, ha ha ha, I can fly, and I can swim, I can escape. Chickens are kind of stuck, so it's like, yeah, probably chickens were more effective there for food and, egg production and everything like that. What about water? Water's kind of important. I don't know if you guys knew that, but we need to drink a lot of it, okay? That's how that goes. Okay, so this is a barrel. It's a pretty damn nice barrel, if I do say so myself. Yeah, it's a nice wooden barrel. Okay, so you're at a port, and you're going to fill that barrel up with fresh water. Well, as fresh as it could be relative to the time period. You can't exactly just go to the store and buy, gallons of, spring water or whatever. So even fresh water that you could find on land is not going to probably be all that fresh by today's standards, okay? But you find the freshest water you can find, you put it in a barrel, you seal the barrel, you load it on the ships, you go out to sea. Once again, first few days, you're probably going to be fine, okay? Even though you got, could be 20, 30 dudes all drinking from the same water barrel, so that's kind of disgusting. But hey, once again, beggars can't be choosers in this instance, okay? Turns out that the sea air is not great for fresh water. Yeah, especially if it's, once again, lacking in any sort of refrigeration or any, purification or filters or anything like that, which, of course, that technology did not exist back then. So, I guess they did have a way to, rudimentarily, filter things, but it wouldn't be the kind of filters you're thinking of, right? So it turns out that if you keep standing water in barrels at sea for, a couple of days, eventually it starts getting very, slimy and gooey, and there might be, this slime substance that's kind of forming on the surface of the water, and you kind of have to, remove that and just hope that the water doesn't hurt you or kill you, because you kind of need it. If it rains, I guess, but if you're stuck at sea with no fresh water and the food is depleting and you got no vitamin C, this would be a really crappy situation to be in. And it doesn't really matter if you do have a gourmet chef back then. Literally, you could take a gourmet chef, the best chef in the world right now, and you could teleport them or time travel them back into that era, they still probably wouldn't be able to do much with it because of the lack of technology. That's why in One Piece, Oda had to add electricity and refrigeration to these pirate ships, okay? So that's the thing with One Piece. The technology is kind of all over the place, and it depends on where you live in the One Piece world. Some areas are more technologically advanced than others. But yeah, on the Thousand Sunny, there is an icebox. There is a refrigerator, at least. It actually has a lock on it, so, Luffy can't just break in the middle of the night, obviously, right? But, Sanji has like a nice gas stove on the Sunny that he can cook with, okay? Obviously, they didn't have refrigerators and gas stoves back then. Maybe Frankie, made up some kind of like generator or something, like a water wheel or something on the Sunny where the water as it's traveling spins the wheel, and then that generates the electricity. Maybe there's a generator or a giant battery or somewhere on the Sunny, and that's what powers the icebox and the gas for the stove and whatever, like to spark it and everything like that. It's a little bit anachronistic, but it works in the One Piece world, okay? It just does, right? So yeah. Now, but even if, like I said, even if Sanji was like actually a real person and he lived during the real golden age of piracy, if there's not much you can do if all the food on board is just shriveled apart and rotten and moldy, you just have to make do with what you got, right? That's just how it is. Let's talk about grog. You ever hear about that? Grog. I heard about it all the time. I never actually knew what it was. I always just assumed it was like a really shitty alcohol that pirates would drink back in the day. And yes and no. Basically what it was is that fresh water that started to become a little bit less fresh and kind of funky tasting, after a few days or weeks at sea, be like, oh man, Captain, this water tastes like piss. I was like, well, that is piss. Jeremy pissed in it last night. Ah, damn it, Jeremy, that's the piss bucket. That's the water bucket, but the water doesn't taste much better, all right? So it's like, ah, man, what am I gonna do? Oh, I have an idea. And then that's when you take out some booze and you put it into, not a lot of it, you just put a little bit of it into the water and, all right, let's have some grog, men. That's how it goes. That's how it is, right? Just a little bit of alcohol to give it some kind of taste. So going back to the whole herb and spice thing, it's not really about like, I was like, okay, this is a moldy piece of like rotten meat. All right, let me add some spices to this and some salt. All right. I guess that's tolerable. You're still eating rotten meat, okay? Now, there were, like, pickling back then. Pickling did exist, as well as salting, just to, like, salt the beef to turn it into jerky. You could do that. They had that kind of stuff. But imagine being at sea for, like, 3 weeks and there's nothing to eat except beef jerky, Oh, God. Yeah, not my cup of tea there, absolutely. Did they have tea? Did they have tea on the high seas? I need to know. That's something else, too. Spices, and then, which I guess would be related to tea, because, tea leaves and whatnot there, right? But anyway, it's completely different in the One Piece world. I'm just going to move on to that now. Probably the most famous chefs in the One Piece world is, of course, Sanji, because he's the, the chef, the cook of the Straw Hat Pirates. We also have the chef that taught Sanji, Redfoot Zeph, that is the head chef aboard the Baratier. Thatch was the head chef aboard the Whitebeard's crew, and he was the leader of the 4th Division. Thatch was also the person that was killed by Blackbeard so he could get the Krabby Patty formula. I mean, the Yami Yami no Mi from him there. So poor Thatch, but he was also a true fighter to the end. He was a good friend of Ace as well. So maybe we'll see. I actually kind of want to learn a little bit more about Thatch in the story. If we could do it. Well, we actually have the Ace Light novel, which has a lot of that. So if you want to know more about Thatch, read the Ace Light novels, specifically the second one. And then, of course, we have Streusen. Streusen, who was the head chef at Whole Cake Chateau, who was, like, the best chef in all of Totland, where, Big Mom trusted Streusen to bake the giant wedding cake and everything for her tea parties and all that kind of jazz. And Streusen also had the cook fruit, which allowed him to turn anything he wanted, any inanimate object, into an ingredient. So he could take, like, a piece of wood off of a tree and take a knife, and he can, like, make salami out of it. Now, it was stated by Big Mom that the food he created using his devil fruit was not very palatable. It didn't taste very good, but it did provide nutrients, okay? I actually think there's a spell in D&D. I think it's because I play a cleric in one of my games, and I was looking through the spells the other day. There's a spell, I think it's like 3rd level, that allows you to create food, and it specifically says it doesn't taste very good, but it does provide nutrients. So it's kind of something like that. We got some other chefs, though, that are maybe not as notable, but still are in the story. We have Wanze, who is a member of CP7, and I hesitate to classify him as a chef because his method of cooking ramen, he was a ramen-specific chef. And what he did was he would eat a bunch of flour and dough, and then using his nose hairs, he would squeeze the flour and dough out of his nostrils, which were, cut by his nose hairs, which made noodles. Yeah, I don't think I want to eat any ramen that Wanze serves, right? Okay. There was also Carmen, who was the chef that appeared at Logtown in the anime. She participated in the cooking contest with Sanji. You gotta cook it tonight. You gotta hold that spatula proudly. Cook it up, yeah. Turn up the heat. Cook it up, yeah. Show them you can beat those eggs. Yeah, that's the 4Kids, orchestra, the great 4Kids orchestra that we all have grown to love. But of course, they don't compare to the single greatest chef in all of One Piece. And it's another filler character. But of course, we have head chef of G8, Jonathan's wife, Jessica. She's just the best. That's all I gotta tell you. Jessica, greatest chef in all of One Piece. Yeah, absolutely. Love the G8 arc, okay? Then, of course, we have the Whole Cake 31, who are the 31 greatest cooks in all of Totland, with Stroyson serving as the head chef of all of them, okay? And we don't get to see a lot of them. They're just there helping Sanji and Pudding and Chiffon. I guess also Lola, Chiffon, Pudding, they're also chefs as well. Pretty much, I would imagine every single one of Big Mom's children has probably learned how to cook or bake, at least to an extent. They're all named after foods. Obviously, some of them have devil fruits, like Perospero has the lick fruit for him just to make candy, so he's the minister of candy. Oven is the minister of browning, so he's all about, like, cooking foods in the oven and stuff like that. Daifuku is the minister of beans. Katakuri is the minister of flour, so I imagine they can cook fairly well. But that has to be one of the things, like, in Totland, education is not that great. You're not going to learn a lot about math or history or science, but you will learn a lot about the culinary arts. And it's actually not even just because Big Mom likes to eat food. It's because Big Mom literally goes on these hunger pangs every so often. You can never predict when they're going to happen, where she's going to require a very specific kind of food, and if she doesn't get that, she will destroy island after island until she does. So in that situation, it's probably best that every man, woman, and child in Totland knows how to cook at least something, okay, right? So yeah, it's like in elementary school in Totland, they teach, okay, kids, today we're going to learn how to make crochem bushes, because if Big Mom ever goes crazy for another one of those, we have to be prepared, all right? That's just how it goes, right? So yeah, those are some notable chefs in the story. I'm not going to go through every single one. There are some others, though. But I honestly think Oda did a great job of showcasing just how vital having fresh ingredients and also somebody that knows how to cook them is during the beginning of Totland. After Sanji left and then Luffy and everybody is heading to Totland to bring him back, and they were like starving on their ship. Remember Luffy's mystery curry that almost killed everyone? Yeah, that's kind of a big deal, although, the mystery curry might have been more palatable to actual pirates. Can you imagine that if you're reading One Piece and you're like, man, I wish I could be an actual pirate just like the Straw Hats, and then you get sent back in time like some messed up genie like grants your request and you end up on an actual pirate ship in the 1700s, and you're like, oh, I can't wait to see what kind of pirate food we're gonna be eating tonight. And this big sweaty hairy guy with a beard steps out from the kitchen, is just like, hey there, I'm Greasy Gary, here's the gruel. And it's just like there's bugs floating in it. Actually, you would probably hope for bugs because that's at least a good source of protein right there. Be like, what's in this? Ah, you're interested in me gruel, are you? Well, we have some rotted vegetables, slightly rotted fruits, and a big stale piece of moldy bread. Want some grog with that? Sure, all right. It's like, oh, this grog looks really murky. I haven't added the alcohol yet there, son. That's just the water. Say when. Glug, 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 glug. So yeah, not a great time. Not the best food in the world. Mostly would have probably been resorted to jerky and hardtack would probably be the best that you could really hope for, right? All right, well, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Now it's time to move on. Well, actually, first we have to roll the dice to see which one we're talking about next, and then we're going to move into frog facts. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I had to change the dice because I had it set to a D6 and I use a D10 for this. Okay, so that was Sanji, number 5. He was the cook. So let's roll this again. Let's give it a few and see which roll on the high seas we're talking about next. 1, we captain. We already talked about that. Come on, give me a number. 5, we just did that. Come on. Something different. 9. Okay, so that's Brooke's position, which is the musicians. So we're going to be talking about those next time. So catch back here for that. But now, moving on to some froggy facts.
Tekking.
Okay, so today's Frog Facts is a fun one. This one was just striking by its appearance. We have the Indian bullfrog, or the Indus Valley frog, okay? And like I said, this frog just striking right out of the gate. You got a yellow frog with dark blue vocal sacs, and it's just, wow, okay, what's the story with this? Well, this is actually not the pigment they usually have. It's a frog that actually has the ability, kind of similar to a chameleon and other animals, to change their body pigmentation depending on what season it is. In this case, the mating seasons, okay? So whenever this frog is not in, like, the mating season, it will look like this, like more of a standard frog. But when mating season kicks off and they have to impress the lady frogs, then they will become very brightly colored. And I guess in the situation with this species of frog, females are more likely to pick a male that is more brightly colored in this instance, okay? So you can have a bunch of different levels of, like, you know, how a frog's pigmentation is going to turn out, right? They tend to avoid coastal and forested areas. They are carnivores. They eat mice, shrews, even smaller snakes, so you don't want to mess with them. And they have this unique ability to actually skip across the water like a stone. So if you startle a frog on land, it'll like just jump away really fast. It can do that in the water, so it's really cool. It can actually, you know, jump on the water and then skip away from you, so that's pretty cool. They're actually in a large range in like around India in the Indus Valley, of course, given the name. However, they've also been introduced to Madagascar and the Andaman Islands in the Bay of Bengal, and they're actually an invasive species there because they can actually eat a lot of these native species. Like I said, they can even eat snakes. It's like it's not a big deal for them. And every group image I've seen of these things, like if you just search for the Indus Valley frog or the Indian bullfrog, you'll see like just a bunch of these frogs like covering marshes and stuff. So they're least concerned. They're kind of just everywhere around this region. Yeah, that's pretty much it, just the Indian bullfrog. But just because of what it looked like, I just wanted to talk about it. Very unique in the frog world. All right, thanks for watching the video, everybody. See you next time. Signing out.